Hi, everyone. My name is Adrienne Lahens. I'm the COO at Influential. And if you guys are just tuning in, this is our Brand Innovators influencer and social live cast. So Influential is a data and insights platform. We power influencer activations optimized to deliver measurable return on ad spend, both offline and online. I am very excited to talk to both Greg and Danielle today. We have both content and media unlock as part of this panel. So we'll cover everything from leadership to influencers, social planning, and production. So I want to take a minute and let Danielle and Greg both introduce themselves. Tell us a little bit about your background. Of course, you guys have incredible careers to date. So would love to hear a little bit from you about your background and your current role. Danielle, let's start with you.
Sure. Well, first of all, hi. Thanks for having me. Really excited to be joining this session and this event. So as you mentioned, my name is Danielle Sporkin. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the U.S. head of integrated planning at OMD. So I oversee our media planning practice, and I'm really focused on bringing together traditional media planning, comms, understanding of audience, and infusing digital data and knowledge into that to create the future, as I say. I lovingly refer to myself as a media Jane of all trades because I've worked in pretty much every practice within media agencies, from planning to investment, innovation, client leadership. I've kind of ticked the box on all of that, and I really bring all that experience into every role that I do. So I'm excited to talk about what I've been working on and, again, be a part of this panel.
Excellent. I'm Greg Manago, and I lead the content practice at Mindshare. I'm a refugee from the television business, but this is as I always say, this is my first job in an agency, although I've been in this job now for a long time. I'm a creative guy. I've worked on a bunch of different campaigns, as Chris was mentioning at the top. But every day we try to solve client problems, and we do that in a variety of different ways. Either partnering with media partners to do something special, coming up with creative ideas on our own, figuring out different ways to be more kind of reactive to what's going on in pop culture and in the culture in general, but also just trying to continue to have a good time and create awesome and engaging things for our clients. So I'm very happy to be here. Thank you guys for having us, and I'm looking forward to it.
Of course, very exciting. So in terms of leadership, you both have had incredible careers, very coveted positions across the industry. So tell me a little bit about your leadership style, and what are some of the core attributes of how you approach leadership in your career, and really what has got you to where you are today. Greg, should we start with you?
Sure. Look, I think as a leader, I try to be a listener and a collaborator. I think, especially again, running a creative team and a business, it's very important for us to be kind of collaborators together with the people on the team who are both junior but also senior. One thing that I think is really important about the team that we've created at Mindshare is that none of us, when it comes to have a creative idea, are the person who definitely has the answer, right? We know that no matter what it is, our intern could have a great idea, and that has happened in the past, that ends up being better than my idea or David Lang, our chief content officer's idea, right? So I think it's really important to be supportive, collaborative, be a good listener, and to lead when we need to, right? A lot of times there are difficult situations. I know you guys have probably seen this too. When you're going through some of these programs, there are very difficult things happen that are very challenging, and you have to step up and lead in that moment and lead the team and try to show them, like, this is the way we're going to do it. One of my favorite things is, I always say, we're going to hang up the phone with a client, and then we can kind of, reassess and figure out what we're going to do. But when we're, talking to a client, we have to make sure that we are telling them that we're going to be able to do it and we're going to be able to, make whatever the situation is come out the way they want it, because that's what clients are looking for today. And especially in these challenging times, it's really important.
It's great.
Yeah, so to build on that, definitely agree about being a good listener, being collaborative. I think something that I've really enjoyed rising up in different positions, and the role that I'm in now is not only am I a leader, but I'm a leader of leaders, and instilling certain traits in others and watching them successfully manage their team or their client or their group. I think in addition to the traits that Greg mentioned, being really empathetic, especially during this time when everyone's working from home with the, racial injustice that's going on, like people as humans and really being able to try to put yourself in their shoes and understand their perspective. I think also learning to manage different styles. There's a certain way that I do things, but everyone operates a little bit differently. So how do you learn to lead all different types of people, having a really diverse team? And then finally, I think showing some vulnerability. Early on as a leader, that was something that was very hard for me, because I felt like once I moved into a leadership position, I had to have all the answers, right? People would come to me with problems or questions, and I felt like I needed to know everything. And it took me a bit of time and coaching to start to learn that being a leader doesn't always mean that you have all the answers. It's okay to say, I don't know, or to show a more vulnerable side, a more emotional side of leadership. So I think those are some things that I've sort of learned within my career.
Yeah, that's great. And along the lines of, what Greg was saying too, like if it's okay to, especially in innovation, right, to say, I don't know. Yeah. And then, but then like make sure in front of the client that you're able to, solve those problems and sort of take it back to your team. How are you guys working on identifying talent, especially right now in this sort of COVID world where, not meeting in the office, for example, there's a lot of challenges in terms of that. How are you looking at identifying talent, and what do you look for when hiring talent, especially today?
You want me to go first? Yeah. I'll take that. I mean, first of all, I've been so impressed of how the OMD team and family has been able to shift to an all virtual world. We operate across multiple offices, so we already had some element of working across teams, but, jumping really quickly onto the remote virtual bandwagon, using video conferencing and other means of chat and things to stay connected. I think we were able to pivot really quickly, and it's led to us continuing to be successful internally and with our clients. In terms of looking at talent, I mean, especially now, individuals who are able to make those pivots, who are coming up with sort of innovative new ideas, that are raising their hand for new opportunities, it is really something that is coming to the forefront in this time where we're continually having to push the envelope with our clients and figure out new ways to keep them engaged and find solutions to new problems. So I think all of those things are things that we look for. Obviously, depending upon the role and level, there are other skill sets that are important to us. For me, working in planning, having an interest in audience and being very audience first and how people think is an important trait for someone that's coming into the planning group. But I think there are other characteristics that span across anyone that we're looking to bring into the organization.
Yeah, and to add to that, I mean, obviously I'm in a different ecosystem at Mindshare in the Group M and WPP ecosystem. But we similarly are I'm really impressed by not only the fact that we've been able to do this as an agency, as an opco, and as a global company, but also our team has done an amazing job of moving into seamlessly, essentially, a remote work environment. And I think, as we're looking for new talent, and as we start to, win new business, we're doing this right now. And what we're looking for is people who are going to bring diversity of thought and diversity of skill set to the team. I think one thing that we have on our team is we have a lot of different people who come from different points of view and different areas of focus, both from their personal perspective, but also from their professional and career perspective. And I think as we try to add new pieces to that team, we're still looking for that. And it's tough. Listen, it's tough to interview somebody over virtual. It's tough to kind of get a sense of who they are and really understand what they're about. But I think we've got a great process in place to do that, and we're hopefully working towards a place where we can all get back together and see each other, not only professionally but as a society. And we're just hoping that these tools that we can use and these processes that we've got in place will help us to be able to pick people who can who can achieve that for us as members of the team. But yeah, I mean, it's a challenge, but listen, we're up for this challenge, and we've been doing it now for 6 months. So I don't know, it feels like it's something that we've been able to accomplish so far. So it's great.
It's been an incredible social experiment, right? Yeah. The work remote, we kind of all got forced into it, and we realized how productive we can still all be given technology. I can't imagine if we were in this position 15, 20 years ago, what it would have done to our economy, and to our industry, certainly. How are you, and Danielle, you mentioned, empathy, and especially during this time, of course, empathy is a really important thing to have right now. How are you both working to really rally your troops, keep them motivated during this time, give them also kind of space to be, human, and to maybe participate in some of the things external from the office that they feel really, called to do, what have you. So how are you really rallying your troops at this time?
Yeah, I think it comes in a number of different ways. Everything from one-to-one meetings just to check in on people, see how they're doing, have like a coffee talk, even if it's, virtual, just to show that you're thinking of someone and caring about them. I think it's also really important in times where everything is stressful to take that moment to appreciate people and recognize good work. We're always giving feedback of things that could be improved, but it's also really important to take that time and say, hey, you did a really great job, or call out in a positive way. If a client has great feedback, just give that recognition. And I think we at OMD have done a really great job. Our CEO, Ozzy, has now a monthly all hands, and there are like sit-ups on that for people who are doing really great work. So not only is it recognition from a manager or a team, but to the whole agency, which again, just recognizing the work that's going in. I think the last thing is flexibility. Obviously, there are a lot of client demands right now, and it's important that things are getting done. But in this virtual remote, with people not only working from home, but having to balance childcare and whatever is going to happen with back to school, having, again, that empathy and a little bit of flexibility to understand if someone needs to take an hour in the middle of their day because they're having lunch with their kids, or they need to, address something, within their house, or whatever it may be. Just recognizing, as long as the work is getting done, that we can have a bit of flexibility and empathy and understanding.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo a lot of that. I think, I've been at Mindshare for a long time, about 15 years. And one of the reasons I've stayed so long is because Mindshare is kind of like a family. And, when a family gets to an adverse place, they have to come together. And one of the things I really worried about was kind of missing out on that culture of, not only for my team, but just the agency. And I think our leadership has done a fantastic job. We have kind of bi-weekly, all hands meetings. Every week there's a team bake where you can get on together with some of the people in the agency and make something. So we're all kind of doing something together. We've had trivia nights. We've had, happy hours. And then, for our team specifically, we feel it's important to always, be on together and talk to each other and, hey, what do you need right now? And, certainly after the George Floyd situation, we were able to give the team some time and say, listen, like if you need to take some time to be off or to, to really go out and do whatever you need to do, like absolutely do that, again, because as in a family, that kind of stuff has to come ahead of other things, So I've been very happy with that. I've even done something more lighthearted where I've put out polls to the team over Microsoft Teams or Slack and said, like, listen, what do you want to see me do? And I'll do it. So one of the things I did was cook something with my daughter, Olivia. Another time I played the piano, which maybe didn't go over as well because I don't really play the piano, but just that kind of stuff to keep us engaged. And then of course there's the one-to-one check-ins and the midnight calls of like, oh my God, this thing is happening and we need to do something. But, it's been great. I've gotten to see, I feel like we've all seen a lot of each other's kids and families and things like that. And I think that's been a real positive in this difficult time to just get to know these people, and their personal lives a little bit better. I think that's been great.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love when the kid kind of pops in the frame when you're in the middle of a call. It really kind of humanizes the whole experience for sure. So shifting gears a bit to influencers, right? Influencers have really become a staple in the marketing mix overall, but influencers can be very misunderstood based on some of the news that we see. So when it comes to influencers, I personally really think about it as like decentralized talent, as independent content creators. How are you each sort of thinking about influencers, sort of defining them within your agency, sort of advising clients on how to leverage influencers? Danielle, we'll start with you.
Sure. So being the head of the planning practice, I'm not that industry facing where I'm negotiating the deals or anything like that. So for me, when I think about influencer, it's more about how do I think about the role of influencers within a holistic media plan. And I think oftentimes things like influencers, similar to things like retail or even out of home sometimes, can be sort of put to the side and say, oh, here's our plan, and then here's our influencer plan, or here's our retail plan. So I'm really trying to get my teams to understand the influencer space more, even if they're not out in the marketplace negotiating it, and thinking about what is the role that influencers play within the plan. What does it do? What goals does it achieve? How does it complement, supplement, reinforce other things that we're doing? Because I'm really interested in having a more holistic plan, because the way that consumers look at it, they don't think about it as like, oh, that's their influencer plan and that's their media plan. They think about it as, I'm just seeing this ad from a brand. So that's really how I've been approaching it, much more upstream, much more, how do we make this a part of a holistic strategy?
Yeah, and similar. Although of course I'm more I guess industry facing with the negotiation on the talent piece. And one thing that we always remind our clients is that influencers are content creators, and we should think about them as producers of content, right? And what they're going to create is going to be an asset that we're going to leverage in some manner, or that they're going to leverage and that we're going to potentially promote, right? So at the end of the day, we look at it through that lens and like, what's the creative idea? What are we asking them to do? And I think that piece of it allows for us to control some of the uncontrollable elements of an influencer program, right? Like if you think about, as you said, like sometimes influencers get a bad rap, publicly, but also, amongst those of us that have done a lot of work with them, because of some, potentially, bad behavior. We can help to control that a little bit, I think, by, giving them clear parameters, thinking more about like what the creative piece of it is and how they're going to bring that to life, and what the end user is going to see and potentially do based on that. So that's how we've been looking at it in recent vintage.
Are you, Greg, are you thinking about influencers more as kind of an extension to some of the work maybe that you're doing in-house, or how are you kind of integrating in? Are you casting as part of sort of like the hero piece, or how are you like leveraging influencers in that way?
Well, I think it depends on the campaign. Sometimes we are doing that, right? Sometimes we're creating kind of a hero program or an activation idea that influencers are going to help, bring to their audience and bring to life. Other times there's a hero asset that we're making, or that even, we're creating with a media partner or a television show, and influencers are coming in that regard, and helping to promote that, or become involved in that. We've done some interesting work in recent vintage with athletes, and using athletes as influencers and bringing them into something, either to help promote something that the brand is talking about, or even to participate in something that is a kind of a bigger thing than just a branded campaign. So we've kind of been looking at them. Every brief is different, every program is different, but by looking at them as creative partners in a lot of ways, it helps us to be able to get something out of them that is a little bit more meaningful than just another post on their Instagram feed.
Yeah. You've been leaning also on influencers, given kind of the challenges that we're faced now with production.
I wouldn't say I don't think we've been leaning on them more now because of that. I mean, we've actually been monitoring and doing a lot of productions during the quarantine, with Zoom and some of those other kind of collaboration tools. Of course, some of that has evolved into influencer programs, because influencers are very capable of shooting themselves and editing themselves, and working with you over like a collaboration platform. But I think we've seen through some of our research, Mindshare does they've been doing a kind of regular look at COVID and how people are reacting to COVID and how consumer behaviors are changing, and we've seen a lot of people increasing their consumption of all sorts of media across all channels, including influencer, right? So I wouldn't say that because of COVID we've done more with influencers. I just think that it's been something that we've continued as a trend that probably started in the back half of last year.
Makes sense. And on the content side, I mean, personally, I think that there's never been a more exciting time to be in the content business, with new platforms popping up. And, how are you kind of approaching some new platforms and creating content, given the sort of, there's been kind of an explosion of new formats, whether it's, Amazon Live or TikTok, or some of these other kind of, of course, like Instagram Reels. How are you approaching content from that perspective, from a new format perspective?
Well, we start with an idea, and whatever that idea is, we, kind of agnostically, again, having, being in a media agency, we're agnostic about the channel and that kind of stuff, right? So we're idea focused. We think of what the idea is, and then we think about, okay, now what are the different ways this is going to come to life? And then that's where we bring in the channel piece, right? And I think depending on what the idea is and how we think we can help engage a particular audience, that's when we start to think about different platforms and different partners and things like that. So we've absolutely kind of started delving into those places, be it TikTok or Reels, as they start to get online, but also AR and things like that have really opened up. I agree with you that now is a great time to be working in the content business, because literally anything we can dream, basically we can do. And I think these platforms really help to bring that to life, because it's it's really like it's really a sandbox that you can almost do anything in.
Yeah, for me, from a planning perspective, very similar. You said it starts with an idea. For us, it starts with the audience, right? Everything that we do is driven by the audience behavior. So every campaign is different, but depending upon who you're trying to target and what their media consumption behaviors are, and as that changes, we want our media plans to shift in response to how our audience is shifting. And same, we don't start with the channels, we start with the objectives and what it is we're trying to achieve, and then what are the right channels or formats that are going to meet that. I also think with all these new platforms, it's really important to reserve some budget for test and learn, right? You want your tried and true, the things that are going to deliver your KPIs, but you also want to have a little room to experiment, because that's how you start to know what's going to be tried and true in the future. So having a little bit of budget set aside to do some testing, to be really clear on what success looks like, and to also be agile and be able to, shift things as you see something being more successful or less successful within your plan.
I think agility is probably the name of the game this year, right? So with so much shifting literally across every single front, especially from a planning perspective, right, Danielle? Of course, there's been, from a platform perspective, there's been, with TikTok, with Facebook, with a number of these different platforms, like how have you been advising your clients, from a planning perspective, how to kind of shift, especially like if you're even like mid-flight, shifting budget?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, back in March when COVID began, there were a lot of shifts that we needed to make rapidly as sports was no longer in existence. And we had, the NCAA tournament didn't happen and shifting out of sports. Cinemas were closing down. So if you had cinema inventory, being able to shift out of that, even out of home with people being quarantined in their houses, having airport ads and billboards didn't make a lot of sense. So there was a lot of rethinking and scenario planning that we had to do. But as Greg mentioned, there also were places where we were really seeing booms, right? In, tons more people watching, online video, people watching more television because they're stuck in their homes. So it was a lot of assessing, again, audience behavior and marketplace dynamics to make shifts that made sense for our clients. And also thinking about what type of messages they wanted to be putting into market at that time. So I think we're continuing to adopt and evolve as things are changing and sports is coming back and going away and coming back again. But really just always having a plan B, C, and D and being ready to activate on something else. And I think our teams have done an amazing job of really thinking creatively about where we can shift budget or different things that we can do. And, having a very collaborative relationship with our clients through all this uncertainty.
Is there kind of a shift, or is there something you've learned in this process? Like you mentioned plan A, B, C, D, right? Like, did you used to have plan A and B and now you have C and D as well? Like, what are some of the things that you've learned along the way this year?
Yeah, well, in fairness, anyone who's been in media planning for a while knows that there's always probably like 10 differences working through at any given time. But I do think the ability to shift quickly, similarly to what Greg said, we've also been doing a lot of our own proprietary consumer research and getting a sense of like what's going on, because I think COVID more than anything has really accelerated certain things. It's accelerated, use of online video. It's absolutely accelerated the use of e-commerce, right? So being able to see what's happening with consumers and understand the trends that are emerging and respond to that, and ideally stay one step ahead and be proactive instead of being reactive.
Perfect. Great. So I'm going to take some questions from the audience. We have a question here. What are some ways that you ensure that you have a diverse pool of influencers that you are working with? And I would also just expand that too, Greg, from a diversity perspective on your end, how are you looking at sort of casting and ensuring that you have a diverse cast, both, in front of and behind the camera as well?
Yeah, well, listen, I think, it's an important question and it's an important thing to think about in, today's world, and something that we've been thinking about for a long time. I think, again, based on the idea and based on, what we're trying to accomplish, I think that really helps us to determine who the right, if we're talking about influencers in front of the camera or even just talent, who the right talent are to bring it to life, whose voice we're looking to, amplify so that we can try to break through with certain types of audiences, right? And, that could be Hispanic, that could be African-American, that could also be like different, different socioeconomic voices and things like that, right? So I think that all kind of comes into play. And then behind the camera, similarly, it's important that we also take a look at the talent that we're, bringing through to tell these kind of stories. And, when necessary, we will look at working with kind of different different talent and different writers and different directors and things like that who can also in a similar way amplify these voices. But also, it's not just about amplifying the voices. It's about really making sure that the experience that we're trying to make sure that is breaking through for the audience is something that's coming from a genuine place of lived and learned experience. So that's a big part of how we evaluate the talent, for any campaign that we do based on what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I would build on that, and I'm going to go a bit beyond just influencers to, diverse media. I think first and foremost, it starts with diverse teams. It's really important that the people who are putting together these plans, who are doing the work, have, as you said, Greg, like very lived experiences, come from different backgrounds, can bring their perspectives together. The more diverse thinking you have, and trying to have teams that represent the people we're trying to reach with our advertising and marketing, the more authentic and diverse it's going to be. But I think beyond that, for me, from a planning perspective, I'm working on an initiative within the agency right now to think about how we diversify our product, and product meaning like the media plans that we put forward. So evaluating like what data sets are we using within planning? Are they representative? Are they truly diversely representative? What types of questions are we asking in our planning process to make sure that all teams are thinking about diversity as they're putting together their plans? And how do we evaluate the media partners that we're working with? And are we bringing in diverse voices in that sense, which could include influencers or could include other types of media partners and platforms? So it's still sort of early days in this process, but I think the fact that we're even having this conversation and thinking about it and bringing awareness to diversity is really an important first step in making what we put out better.
And Danielle, you lead some allyship programs at OMD. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm really passionate. I've been passionate for a really long time about gender equality, and more realizing that I need to be just as passionate about racial equality, because it is really important in not only making sure that teams are diverse, at our entry level, but all the way up through our levels. So, taking my position of power and privilege and trying to use it for good. We've got great employee resource groups, our Black Leadership Network. I've been getting involved with them to see how I can support their initiatives, as well as I mentioned, this product initiative that we have to diversify our product, and working with our OMD D&I champions, which is a cross-functional group of people that are looking at everything across the agency. So right now, the racial justice movement, it's timely, it's conversations that's happening, across all walks of life, but also is occurring within our industry. I think it's a really important conversation to have.
Absolutely. And diversity and inclusion is not only, good for humanity, but of course it's great for business too, once you bring more people, to the table. We have another question here. What advice would you give to marketers who are just starting out on influencer marketing?
I don't know, how long do you have? I think my advice would be, to not, I think, similar to what Danielle said, like, I would caution them not to think about influencers as this thing that's over here and your marketing plan is over here. And like, what's our influencer idea? I think I would say, try to consider that influencers are a very important part of how a large majority of young people get all of their information, basically. And try to consider the fact that when you're thinking about who those people are and what they're going to be talking about for your audience, that you bring that into mind, and that the creative ideas are brought up in that manner.
Yeah, I would say make sure authenticity is your number one priority. It's very clear when an influencer is just given a product and tries to force fit it into something. So it's really important that as you're doing your discovery of who you want to partner with, that it's someone that actually has a connection to your brand and can speak about it in an authentic way, because that's going to come across and that's going to take you a lot further than some big name but doesn't really have a connection to the brand. So it's really about making that connection that's going to come across as authentic.
there are literally millions of influencers. So there's plenty to choose from. It's about finding that needle in the haystack. We have another question here. Everyone has their own style. How would you like a potential mentee to approach you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just reach out and like speak up. I have this philosophy that when people reach out to me, I always try to connect. I always try to respond. I always try to help in whatever way I can, because I believe that, you know, in my career, both in the past when I have needed support from others, and there will be times again where I will need, you know, my peers, my mentors, my connections to help me in my next step, that they're there because it's this giving back and paying forward. So I think the best thing to do to start is just like be brave, reach out, even if it's someone that you don't know. I've had people reach out to me on LinkedIn just randomly and say, hey, I saw you speak at this event. I'd love to connect for 30 minutes. Don't be afraid, like put yourself out there. The worst thing that'll happen is someone says no. And it's better than if you never try.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, I say to mentees, well, first of all, I'm very passionate about mentoring other people because I've had 2 careers now where I didn't know anybody when I started in these careers. One in the television business, and you know, again in the marketing business, and I didn't know anyone, and so I had to basically look for mentors wherever I could find them, right? And so I'm always passionate about when people reach out to me that I'm going to spend time with them. I'm going to help them in any way I can. I'll connect them to people. I'll make recommendations. I'll try to advise them on whatever it is that they're looking for, because you know, I needed that in my career. I didn't know anything about how to be a television producer when I started out, and I certainly didn't know anything about the media and marketing business when I started out. So I really needed other people to help guide me. So yeah, I mean, whatever people need, I'm always willing to help out and you know, not make it. There isn't one style of mentoring. There isn't one style of being a mentee. It's whatever the person needs and whatever they feel comfortable with. As far, you know, sometimes people just want to talk and just, you know, like, hey, am I doing the right thing? And it's, you know, a lot of times I'll say, yeah, I think you are, but you know, maybe you could also try this or whatever. And other times people are like, hey, I need help with these 3 things. Can you connect me to these 3 people, whatever? And I'm happy to do that as well.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Oh, go.
Sorry, I was just going to throw one more thing in, that I think it's also really important that people think about mentorship versus sponsorship. So mentorship is like that person that you can go to for advice with problems, just to talk. And then sponsorship, which is equally as important, is someone typically within your organization that can actually help elevate you within your career. And you need both in your career. You need the mentor to really be that trusted advisor, and that sponsor to help you get where you need to go. So think about both of those things as you're seeking out mentorship and sponsorship.
That is incredibly great advice. And Danielle and Greg, both of you are not only extremely inspiring leaders, but also it sounds like you're both very approachable as well, and and focused on giving back and helping people kind of rise within the ranks of your organization. So awesome to connect with both of you, and thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much. Have a good rest of your day.
Have a great weekend.
You too.
Thank you all so much, Greg, Danielle, Adrienne. That was a fantastic session. Really got a lot out of that. Appreciate all of you. Have a wonderful weekend. Moving on, we are back to my brother, Ryan Dietert, our CEO.